Hey, all. Welcome to another exciting episode of Coach's Corner. As we all know, this is a discussion by coaches and industry experts on challenges, trends, and paths forward as we all try to navigate the life that is business. I'm Adam Gehabe, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mike Lamb of Focal Point Business Coaching of Utah, and I am with Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary. So, um, no guests today, Mike. So it's just you and I. And once again, I love these sessions. We're going to fly off the cuff a little bit. Kind of wanted to talk about something that I've been seeing quite a bit in my normalized conversations with clients, and that is how are they using their time? It's very common for, a client to come through and say, I'd like to be able to have more time. I'd like to work less on the business and be able to spend more time with family, friends. And we've talked about that, which is fantastic. And I love that we can provide that for clients. But that always leads me down a path of the inquiry as to where they are spending their time. What are they doing? Why are they doing that? What is that adding value towards? Is that something that you're seeing a lot these days?
Yeah, I run into it all the time, and again, it's common even for myself sometimes
Yep.
to stop and say, "What am I spending my time doing?" Um, I guess what comes to mind with a lot of my clients when I'm talking to them is that famous and living color character, Fire Marshal Bill
Oh,
Jim Carrey.
yes.
They're
Don't
out putting
don't make
out,
me do it either, right? That would be pretty scary.
yeah. They're dealing with a lot of different things. Things come up every day and happen all the time as a business owner, and they get caught in roles that they probably didn't anticipate even in the morning when they got out of bed that
Hmm.
they have to take that role um and be involved in the company and doing things that they didn't expect for the day. So they're
Yep.
they're putting out a fire somewhere.
Yep.
This fire just popped up and I've got to jump over, and they're running around doing all those things, and then there's a lot of things that are getting put off. I
Sure
think
is.
of when I think of this, I think of the Stephen Covey example with the cup and putting the rocks in. You've got those big rocks, you got those big things you got to get done, but there's a lot of other stuff happening around you. You put in sand and it fills in the
Sure.
spaces around them, and you put in water and it
Yep.
fills up even more space. And a lot of times, though, those big rocks don't make it in because there's a lot of sand stopping it from even to get into the cup,
That's right.
because you're dealing with a lot of things. And we all have to deal with those things now. How we're doing it, uh, I guess, and how we're approaching it, we should have a process in place. And that's the coaches or the people that I'm coaching and talking with just probably don't have a process in place to deal with some of these things that they could put a process in place for.
I think that's spot on. So process is always something that we kind of work through. And then that immediately lends itself to how are they setting their goals and their priorities, and how are they picking off what they're going to handle for each day, for each week, for each month, et cetera. But, you know, even before we start talking about process, don't you have to kind of start from scratch and saying, well, what are the priorities? And more importantly, what are all the hats that you're wearing, right? Um, I think identification and forcing people to actually sit down and reflect on what are all the tasks and items that they're doing, and more importantly, how do you categorize all of those? Because it sounds so simple. I was just asking someone yesterday. I'm like, I need you to categorize your 5 tasks that you do every single week. She's like, well, you know, I don't get that. Why are we doing this? I want help with planning. I said, get it, right? But let's start with just seeing all the items that you're working on. And let's see if there's some similarities with those items. Do they fall within some specific categories or buckets? And the point and purpose of why I wanted her to go through that exercise is to kind of see the types of items that she was working on and if those items were indeed aligning with her priorities. Now, we hadn't even gotten to the point of setting those priorities, but it was my precursor, my way of setting up the next discussion to say, okay, well, X, Y, and Z are not in alignment with any of these priorities that you just told me were important to you. So what are you doing them for? Right. And more importantly, then it's okay, well, what who should be doing these types of tasks, and when should they be done? So, as I just kind of did in my backwards way yesterday, I walked us right into what I'm kind of hoping to chat about today, and I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down here.
Yeah.
But I got a feeling that we should have a little chat about one of our power principles, and let's talk about the three eyes of the business owner. How you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right.
I mean, that leads right into what we're talking about.
So, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot here, do you mind talking about the high level overview of why we walk through one of these principles called the three eyes of the business owner, and what does that really mean and entail?
Yeah, so the three eyes of the business owner comes from the E-Myth Revisited.
Yep.
It's a Michael Gerber book, and
Do you have it
it
handy?
outlines. Of course, I do. There you go.
There
If
it
you need
is,
a
folks.
coffee, look at I had it pulled up just for this situation,
Just in case, right?
but it's something that I coach on a lot and I teach on a lot. A lot of people start a business because they're good at the craft or the skill that they're doing. And they don't just start a business because, hey, I want to make a lot of money. They do it because they're good at a skill and it becomes a business for them.
Yep.
But they don't stop and look at there's three parts of a business. There's the entrepreneur that created the business and
That's one.
started a business, visionary, right?
Yep.
The person that's like, this could be something bigger, and I have a vision of something I want to create and build a business around. Um, then there's the manager role of the business owner. That's the guy who's looking backwards at
Mhm.
what's happened in the past, looking at the records, looking at the results, making sure that they have the results they need from the data they're collecting and the information and managing that around that.
Absolutely.
And then there's the guy that's on the ground doing the work, the technician
Boots on the
that
ground,
eyes
baby.
is on what's getting done today,
Mhm.
sometimes dealing with the simplest things, but sometimes the most complex things in the company sometimes as well. And so the technician, that you pay a technician, I don't know, some people pay technicians $15, some could go up to $65 an
Sure.
hour, somewhere around there. Um, and then you have a manager who's overseeing those people, and it's probably a salary
Yeah.
position, 50 to $75,000 a year,
Sure.
to do a position like that. But then you look at the value of that person that's creating the vision, that's leading all of them. What value would you put on
The
that?
founder, the entrepreneur, the owner. Well, I mean, it's infinite, right? Because it's as much money as you can possibly make.
Yeah.
All right. But point
You,
being, it's got the highest return, per dollar, right? And so, well, are you going to tell me that they're not spending that much time there? Is that where we're going to go here?
Yeah, that's really what it comes back to is
I know, right?
how much time are we spending in each of these roles? You said the founder. It
Yeah.
just made me think of that wonderful movie with Michael Keaton where he
Mm,
creates and think of the value of his vision and what he created.
yep.
But how many people spend much time on that vision part of their business?
Well, let's just
How
pause
much
there, right? And let's just hammer this home. You laid out three separate, let's call it personas, right? We've got the entrepreneur, we've got the manager, and we've got the technician, right? So the entrepreneur should be looking where?
forward to the
Forward,
future?
right? I mean, because they're focused on strategy, growth. Well, I mean, growth. Every single client we ever talk to says, I want to grow, right? So they should be focused on growth. And so that manager, their main focus is where?
They're dealing with what's happened in the past to learn how to do things better going forward.
If we can't learn from history, and more importantly, our mistakes, we can never correct those actions to therefore get that continuous improvement that we're always looking to do on a daily basis. And perfect. And I know you said this, but once again, hammer this sucker home. The technician role, where are those person's eyes?
They're looking at today. They're looking at what's right in front of them and what they've got to get done today.
Right?
If it's cooking 20,000 donuts or if it's creating processing chips, whatever it is, they're focused on getting their
Yeah.
job done today.
So let's just say for all these discussions, when you walk through these with a client or just any random person through your BNI, for instance, when you start to ask these individuals how much time they're spending in each of those roles, what are you hearing?
Um, Technician. And
As
they
in,
don't say it, they don't, yeah, they're spending most of their time in a technician role. They
mhm.
don't say it that way. They,
Yeah, yep, yep.
they don't come straight forward and say, yeah, I was out on the plumbing job and I actually had to get in the trench and help do this work. They don't say it that way. Well, I was overseeing a job. Well, you were out on a job then. You're
Yep.
getting it done.
And how long, how often are they saying that that's kind of where they're spending that time?
I, Most of them are probably between 60 and 75% of their
Okay.
time in
You
a
know,
technician role.
what we see on average, what we've been taught, what's in the Michael Gerber book says that they're spending about 80% of their time on average dealing with the here and now, the fires, all those things that you were talking about at the very beginning. 80%. So if they're spending 80% of their time putting out fires and dealing with the here and now, that's not leaving a whole bunch of time for any of those other roles. So, what are you hearing back from the, let's call it managerial role, right? What are some of the things that they are telling you that they are spending time in, and then how often does that evaluate to?
They're dealing with managing all aspects of the business from accounting to managing the operations manager, the sales team, and putting sales processes in place. I would say that if we only have 80 or if we only have 20% of our time left, then we're using 20% of our time managing.
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
And I know that for certain that most of them are.
You know,
And that's the answer I'm receiving.
sadly, I concur. I think a lot of people are spending a ton of time in the technician and the managerial role. And, part of that too, Mike, is because I think they're trying to blend the managerial role with the entrepreneur role. Now, I don't know if I've seen that work all that well on a consistent basis because, as we all know, there's a time and place for our attention to be focused. And, there's that age-old principle that every single time, your cell phone rings, right? And something like that, you typically have to take around 17 minutes for your brain to reprocess and refocus back on a, particular task and or action. So that doesn't leave you a whole lot of time to look forward. So let's just say 80% towards a technician. Gerber says roughly 18%, roughly, looking at the managerial role. Let's just go with Gerber's figures because that's the book
Yeah.
that's right in front of you. That leaves 2% for the entrepreneur role. Looking forward, looking at growth, looking at strategy, looking at ways to better not just yourself, but every single member or person within the organization. If they're not doing that, Mike, what does that mean for their projection over the next 6 to 9 months? What are you seeing?
They're gonna be doing the same thing in 6 to 9 months that they're doing today.
Okay, so let me sum that right back up for you. Stagnation, one word, stagnant, right? Status quo. So you better love status quo
You
because
better like Groundhog's Day, the movie.
ooh, oh, you are
Just
just bringing out some really classic ones here today.
having some fun.
No, I love it, but stagnation can be a killer of growth, right? If you're not moving forward, you've heard this, right? If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. I don't know if that's true either, so we can pump the brakes on that. But what I can say is for anyone who's got large scale aspirations and wants to increase in any number of the fields and factors that we can kind of adjust, if you're putting all of your attention, what did we say, 98%,
Mhm.
looking at the manager or the technician, you're not doing yourself a favor by looking
What?
backwards and down, and
Why? And the question is, why did you start? Why did you start a business then? You have to ask them that question. It was exciting. It was fun. It was evolving. It had this opportunity to to do
Betterment,
things that you never did before.
the
Yeah, betterment.
entrepreneurial spirit, the
Yeah.
want of something better,
How
right?
exciting is it to start a business?
Oh, it's wildly,
Like, do
wildly
you start it
frustrating.
to just yes, but
Gosh,
it's also exciting and fun.
it
And
is
they
invigorating.
they created that because they had that vision and excitement,
Yep.
but they get away from it at some point in time, and they if you think about that first part of starting a business, you're probably spending 80% of your time in visionary stuff and 20% of your time trying to just get things done.
Yep.
You know, and then that definitely tilts over, obviously, where your business is running, it's making money. You probably get caught up in the founder's trap at some point in time
Ooh,
and
how did I know we were going to go Sigmund's curve here?
stagnate
Yeah.
and stagnate. And growth is fun, making money's fun, doing the same thing over and over, that's just another job.
Yeah. So, I think we can kind of come full circle and say that this is a great exercise that we like to go use to bring some awareness. Love that A word, right? Awareness to where they are spending time and more importantly, where we'd like to see them spend more time. So I don't know about you, but once we've gone through this type of principle and I get their eyes to open, it's like you're right. We just categorized my actions for last week, and less than 1% of that time would have been categorized as being in the growth role, the forward-looking role. What I like to do is I like to stop right there and say, okay, well, what are one or two action items that you can give me for next week that are going to place your attention in that forward role? And then it's how are you going to schedule that? How are you going to make sure that that time is baked and built in for this type of exercise? So now, not only did we open their eyes, see what I did there, vision eyes, open their eyes, get them to tell us that there is something else that they want to do to spend more time in this space because it's going to help them moving forward. But then we've also helped with the scheduling and the accountability aspect of helping drive that action forward. So, I look at that session and I can't help to walk away feeling great as a coach because I feel like we've actually been able to take some really hard steps in order to get them moving towards that next, step forward. Here's my next follow-up question to you, Mike. When we've done that, what do you do to kind of help make sure that they stay on that path forward and they continue those types of actions? What is that? What do you pull out of your repertoire to make sure that that is a consistent action moving forward?
I make sure that I'm always following up on what they're doing.
Yep.
So that's the accountability aspect. They return and report. They tell me what they did and on their action plan, what they wanted to accomplish, and if they accomplished it. And that happens. That's the very first thing that we do every coaching session. Um,
Yeah. I'm kind
so
of chuckling here because in weeks past we've talked about goal setting and business plans and things of that nature. But, you know, as we just came full circle on this discussion, and I'm sitting there going back to this and I'm going, well, we just forced a business plan to be written. And it may be very small and it may consume a day, a week, a month, etc. But we've established a healthy pattern or action that helps them move the ball forward and then hopefully can set a pattern. And that pattern is repeated. And then you get to that point where you can almost get that continuous growth that I was mentioning at first. So it sounds so easy. Why is it so hard?
because the fire marshal bill comes out in all of us. And we wake up on Monday morning and there's 100 things that got to get done.
It is taking
And
every ounce of my soul to not curl my upper lip and to give you a little bit of my fire marshal. But I don't think anyone wants to see that, let alone do I want to hear it back when I listen to this recording.
yeah.
So we will pass.
But that's, it's our baby, it's our business, it's what we created.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And, I think it's great to have that ownership but I think it's very, very easy. It's very, very easy for us to get caught up in, whether you want to call it the next firefight, fire drill, or our next passion project, or the next big thing that's in front of us, because there may be a big carrot that's dangled there, and we really want this, even though we have all these things kind of moving. Point being, it's important to get sidetracked. And so, how I like to like re-cement this base practice and principle is plans are important. If they're just sitting up here in your head, they're wishes, they're wants. They're really hard to take action on them. And so going through these types of exercises and checking back in every week to say, all right, so Mike, how much time did you spend in each role this week? Just to give me a rough estimate, right? It's a great way to kind of reset the focus on
Mhm.
these are the things you need to do to be successful. Set that next goal, set that next want, get it down on paper, because then it's actionable. We can track it, we can trace it, we can talk about how you're going to quantify it. What does success mean? Those are all really good, healthy practices to sustain that growth and to sustain that progress. Yeah.
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 Um, I think about it, you think about the different personalities, and we've gotten into disc over the past little while, but we all like different things that motivate us, drive us forward. And you have to understand your personality and what's going to motivate you to drive you to do these things. And that's the other wonderful thing about a coach is we do know that about them when we first start, and we can help them recognize how to motivate themselves to get those things done as well.
It's funny. We always talk about how we start our engagements with going through DISC and trimetrics and the how and the why and the blending and merging of all that stuff and communication styles. And it is so critically important to the fundamentals of us being able to build a plan, to be able to go into our stack and pull out curriculum that is, meaningful for people moving forward. And I keep going back to that initial debrief, right? That first assessment debrief that we walk through and we start getting people to really tell us what's important to them. Things, what are your top three things that you like? What are the top three things you don't like? How do you like to be managed? How do you like to lead? All of those fun things. But that really kind of helps set like your personal card of do's and don'ts, right?
Yep.
And from that, I don't know about you, but that's how I drive our priorities, right? These are your initial
100%.
goals. Let's prioritize these. How are these important? And then you let me go figure out each week how to drive the conversation, to facilitate the conversation so that we're touching on these principles that are important to you. We know how you like to communicate so that they're ingested. You take them in and you know how to do something with them. All of that from walking through a very simple principle, asking where your eyes are looking. Fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
super fascinating.
I know.
And
I
it
know.
it sounds so simple, and it is such a simple when you lay it out, the vision and the amount of time they're spending, it's very simple to recognize, and then just driving it the next part, and that's where the coach comes in. So is so important. There's
Well,
someone there to
that's
help you
why
get that.
people like you, people like myself, we will talk through something like we just did, and then there's always three or four steps that we're pulling out of it for next time, right? It's we just
Yeah.
laid the foundation, the framework for multiple, discussions, and all of those should hit a different value point, and that client, that person should walk away with knowing something new about themselves, having an action to go help to take to help their business, help their priority forward, and then it gives us that additional piece of information that we digest and once again recycle, figure out what we need to do next, right?
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell, folks. Rocket science, sometimes. Business therapy, always. Always business therapy.
Now you have our closing line.
Listen, I use that one constantly. It is a good, healthy combination of business therapy because people aren't always necessarily straightforward. And so sometimes you have to, tease and pull out bits of information to help us paint a picture on where to go, what to do, and what truly is a driving force and driving factor, right? Awesome. Well, listen, we're getting up on it. Fantastic discussion today. Any closing lines, closing thoughts you want to kind of have for us here today, Mike?
No, I have nothing.
All right.
So I thought that was a great discussion. Really enjoyed it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
apply that
Well,
to what you're doing and listen up and
thank you
use it.
very much for playing along with me and flying off the cuff, and thank you for having your books always at the ready because I can always count on that one. So as always, my friend, thank you very much for all those that are out there listening, watching. Please don't forget to reach out to us, LinkedIn, email, schedule some time to chat. As much as we enjoy talking to each other, we enjoy talking to you more. And last but not least, always let us know your interest on future topics, and we'd love to go handle them within a future episode. So, for myself and Mike Lamb, I'd just like to thank you once again for taking 25, 30 minutes to listen to us talk, and you've just come out of your coach's corner. So, thank you all. Mike, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Episode 10 in the books.
Episode 10. All right. See you guys. Bye.